Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen from Zen Art, and today we are going to paint witchy things. So I've chosen a few and I've shared them earlier, but I will also share them later once the live is finished for those who want to catch the replay. So hi Roxanne. So we're just gonna keep it fun and simple and easy, nothing too complicated. And then I shared it to you so you can find it in the chat. So if you want to download it and trace it, I'll also show you how I do it. So I sketch it, but if you want to have a sketch that you keep and then you can just trace over it repeatedly, you can repeat it as many times as you can quickly. So here I'm gonna do them all in one paper, but feel free to do yours in different smaller batches, one for each paper, and you can just have fun with it. In my case, I'm just gonna do it in one big paper like this. So this is not even 300, this is just 200 GSM, but since I'm not gonna be doing any, hi Suzanne, I'm not going to be doing any heavy washes, this will hold. But if you want to do heavy washes, then use thicker paper so that it can hold the water better, so it won't buckle too much. Okay, so I'm going to be using some materials I'll show to you. So I'm going to flip the camera down and I'm going to flip it around, so don't get confused if it looks upside down. I'll flip it. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so flipping it back down and now it has focused. Okay, so bear with me if sometimes it goes out of focus. It'll eventually refocus. Okay, so here is the example of what I did. Let me flip it first. There you go. So now you're seeing it the right way. Okay, so here is the bottle, and then I did sketches of each. So bottle and then the hat. So it's just simple sketches, and then you can download it, you can trace it, you can print it, you can use in the daytime you can use your window as your light box, or in my case I have my iPad and I just up the brightness and it'll show. So earlier I said I'm going to do it all in one paper, so I have a big paper. So what I do is I just put it over. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it, but okay, so this is what I do. I have my iPad down there with really high brightness. I guess you can also do this with your phone if you're not going to be using a huge sized paper, and then just trace it. Okay, so today I'm going to draw along with you since it's not too complicated. Okay, so here I see it and I'm just going to roughly, you don't even have to copy it exactly. So I'm using an HB pencil. So this is what I use when I'm sketching for watercolor, because you don't really want your lines to show through later on. So this is what I use so that I can easily erase it, or even if I forget to erase some dark parts, they're not really very dark. So here, just quick sketch. It doesn't have to be exact because you're gonna paint over it anyway. So this hat, we're not gonna do all the creases, the complicated creases. In this hat, in this witch's hat, we're going to focus more on playing with colors. Okay, so I have my hat right here. Okay, I'll bring it nearer. Okay, there you see, very lightly sketched. That way it won't show up even if your colors are light. Okay, so I'm going to set this sketch to the side. And today I'm going to be using, I haven't really pinpointed yet, colors from Sereno and Allegro palette. So I'm just gonna have them ready. So if you haven't encountered this before, this is Zen Art's latest watercolor sets. This is our beginner set. So Allegra has the warm colors. As you can see in the swatches, it has really all the yellows and reds, and it even has this bright pink upper rose. And then the Sereno has the cooler colors. If you compare, it has more of the blues, the greens, and the browns, and just a few of the yellows and reds. So it has more of the cool colors that you can use. Okay, so I'm going to set them here to the side, and I'll probably be using more of the Sereno because this is witchy, so more darker colors. All right, so I'm going to put it here, and I'm also going to use brushes from our Turner collection. So I'm just going to get some rounds. Okay, and then I'm also going to use some from our fine line. Okay, let me just get them quickly. Okay, so since I'm going to be working on a big paper, but there's lots of them, I'm probably going to need some detail brushes. So let's see. I'll get the one flat brush and one rigger. Okay, so the rigger is really very useful for fine details. So let's use that. Okay, this is one of my favorite brushes, the rigger. And you'll see later on because it's really nice for those long thin lines. Okay, so let's start with the witch's hat. Okay, so if you saw the photo earlier, this is our inspiration. Let me see. Okay, so here is the witch's hat, and it's really just instead of just plain black, we mix a couple of colors together and create this sort of galaxy-ish look. So the hat is just simple, no folds, just more of a play of colors. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, so if you've got your materials ready, just paint along. Okay, in my case, let me just, okay, forgot my tissue. So you can use any absorbent material. Okay, so if you have your mixing plate, you can pre-mix your colors. So you can also test them out before you put them on your paper. If you're not sure, it's good to have an extra paper just to test out your colors. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to use my round brush here, just an average size. This is number 5 probably. Okay, so I'm going to be using some purple, some blue, and then Payne's gray. Okay, so Payne's gray is it's really, if you don't like to use black, if you don't want to use black, then you can use Payne's gray. You can mix a couple of colors with it. So here I'm going to use Payne's gray, indigo, and then I'm also going to add some violet, just to give it to make it more interesting and not too flat. Okay, but of course you can, if you prefer black, then you can go ahead and do that. Okay, in my case, I'm just going to show you a simple way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to start with just wetting the hat, except for the band here, except for the light colored band. So I'm going to wet all around that. Just first wet the paper. So we're going to do wet on wet. Okay, so let's wet this. So make sure it's glossy when you wet it. So not too much that the water is pooling, but just when you glance at it from the side, it's going to be glossy. So you'll know that your paper is wet enough. For some paper, for thicker paper, you'll need to put more water. But for this paper, it's not too thick, it's not too thin, so it doesn't need too much. Some paper really absorbs the water very quickly, so each paper is different. So try out how your paper works, and then you'll find out how much water you need to put. Okay, so it's all wet. I'll show you. Okay, you can see it's glossy like that. So that's what we want. Okay, and then next I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can see closer. Okay, so there you go, and then I'm going to adjust there. All right, so I hope you can see this. Okay, so I'm gonna go over a little bit because it got absorbed while I was talking. Okay, so just use clean water. Okay, and then next I'm gonna get some Payne's Gray straight from the pan. Okay, so I love Payne's Gray. It has this really nice, interesting granulation if you're into nice granulations. So I'm gonna just go over the hat quickly. Okay, so I'm just tracing around the shape that I drew earlier. You can also try with black. So if you want to do heavier washes, then please use thicker paper so it doesn't buckle. Okay, so while the paper is still wet, I'm gonna go and get other colors and just charge it in. So it's you drop in other colors while it's still wet. So you're charging color into your first mixture. Okay, so let's do that. I got some indigo, and I'm just gonna drop it here and there. And since the paper is still wet, it's just gonna flow and spread beautifully. So that's the magic of wet and wet. When the colors mix, they have this diffused look that's just really beautiful and soft, and you know, if you don't want to see any brush strokes, things like that. Okay, and then for some pop of color, let's add violet. So it's a pop of color, but it's not too much. You can also try pink. So let's see. First, I'm just adding one color at a time, and then I can just add more later if I feel that it needs more color. But for now, it's looking okay. All right, so if you feel like some parts are too heavy, just oops. So just lift them out using your brush, okay? Like this. So just damp brush and just lift it out. But if you like it as it is, then just leave it. Okay, so now we've got a nice, interesting color. I'm gonna add more Payne's Gray here and there just to darken some parts, some areas. So while your paper is still wet, you can really do more and more additions and texture. But once it's dry, those brush strokes will show through. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your wet and wet. Okay, so practice on different paper so you'll see which one works best for each technique. Okay, so if you make a mistake, just with a clean wet brush, just go over that and lift it off. Okay, like I did, so I smudged it. Okay, so you've already got this interesting mix of colors for your witch's hat. So I'm going to wait for it to dry before I add the band so that the colors don't get mixed in, so that the yellow won't turn gray because it will mix. Okay, so if you want one part to remain pure, wait for the other parts to dry before you add that. Okay, so you can use a blow dryer to hasten the time. So if you're not worried about your color moving and your water moving around, then you can totally use your head dryer. Okay, later on, once this dries even further, you will see that the colors will lighten. So that's the thing with watercolor. What you see now while it's still wet won't be the same once it dries later. So when that happens, you can just totally add another layer. That's also the magic behind watercolor. You can just work in layers and take your time. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. Let's do a potion bottle. So let's see. I've also sketched that and I've also shared it earlier. So here is my potion bottle. Okay, so I'm going to again just put my paper on top and just trace. So in this case, I will trace it. Yeah, okay, I'll put it down here. Okay, so you can't, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll just quickly trace over it. Okay, so when you sketch, especially if it's not too detailed anyway, you don't have to draw the lines dark, or you don't even have to completely draw the lines. I use a lot of suggestive lines when I do watercolor. So this is just your guide. This is not your main. Everything you will finish later in watercolor. Okay, so this is a quick sketch. And then with bottles, they have this line around. Okay, I thickened it a bit so just to show that that's the glass. Okay, so you don't paint to the edges the color of the potion. You leave space between for the color of the glass. So this can be differently colored. Your glass can be clear, your glass can be blue, green, pink, whatever your glass is, that will be the shape around the bottle. Okay, so I'll bring it closer. There, as you can see, there is this like skin around, so that is the color of your glass. Okay, so this is fun because you can totally have fun with this. You can change the color. You can use blue, green, whatever color you want your glass to be. Okay, so when you're drawing your cork, whatever the shape of the cork is, if it's a circle, well, corks are usually circular, then that's also going to be similar to the shape of the potion. Okay, so just mimic it, otherwise it's going to look weird. It means that this is from a different angle and this one is from a different angle. So try to keep your elliptical shape the same size. Okay, so let's work on this now. Okay, just let me know if you want it nearer, if you can't see anything. Okay, so this is like our inspiration, but I did more of a bit not too flat. All right, so let's try to create our mixture. Okay, so let's say my bottle is blue. Okay, so I'm gonna use some light blue just to shape the bottle. Okay, so I'm gonna go with Prussian blue, but really light. Okay, so remember when I said earlier that, you know, it's also useful to have a paper on the side that you can test. So once you have your paper, you can test out your color, if it's too dark, if it's too light, before you use it on your paper. So you have your like scratch paper. Okay, so I like it. It's not too dark. So I'm first gonna go over the bottle, the color of the bottle, which is like a pale blue. Okay, let me zoom in further so you can see clearer. Okay. So I'm gonna go and line it around. Okay, so if you have any questions, just let me know. And we also have other Halloween themed lives that we did. Theodora did several, so just check out our events tab and you'll find there, from what I can remember, spooky mansion, also ghosts. All right, so there's my bottle. So I'm also going to go over here lightly. So I'm going to do this lighter because this will be at this angle, the glass is thinner, so it's lighter. And then you can also decide what color your potion will be. So you can add a highlight to the glass before or after. It's up to you. If it's after, then you can use white gouache or acrylic, or you can leave that white part out, or you can color lift right now. Okay, so you can always add the white later. Okay, so now we have this. I'm just gonna dry it quickly so that I want to keep the lining crisp. So I'm just gonna dry it before I do the color of the potion. Okay, so now I think I want some blue-green potion. So again, you can test out your colors beforehand, see if you like what you end up with, because, you know, sometimes you might not like it, so just test it out so that there are no regrets later. Okay, so I'm going to use some green. I'm going to use let's see, phthalo green. And then I'm going to mix some blue to it. Okay, let's try ultramarine. So again, you can also try mixing your colors beforehand so you can see how your colors mix together. Do they look nice, or maybe you don't like that shade? Okay, so I like it. I'm going to add more green and blue just to have a thicker color. Okay, so I'm going to now draw the potion. I'm going to leave circles here and there just to show that it's bubbling. You can have different kinds of potions. It's up to you. So now I'm going to go and paint around those bubbles. And also you can add them later on if you don't want to paint around. Or if you like to use masking fluid, you can also use that so that your white is preserved. Okay, so I have my bubbles here and there, not too many. So you can be totally creative with your potion, whatever potion you like. You can even have a heart-shaped bottle if you want to show that it's a love potion or something like that. Okay. So usually the liquid at the top would be lighter because it's gonna reflect light as well. Okay, so I'm gonna lift off some of the color now, and then I'm just gonna add the line later once this layer has dried. Okay, so for now, this is the first layer. Okay, and while it's still wet, I'm gonna add another color. I'm gonna add a deeper blue. Let's go with the Prussian earlier. So I'm just gonna add it here and there. Again, we charge our previous color. So that our potion looks extra interesting. And then I'll just allow it to spread on its own. Okay, so this part can be challenging at first because you're just so tempted to just work it, but try your best not to go over it and overwork it because it's going to ruin the effect of the watercolor spreading, the wet on wet. Okay, so wet on wet can be a little challenging, but it's really fun. Okay, so I'm going to bring it closer so you can see my potion. I love it. It looks magical. It looks like it's bubbling up. What can it be? Okay, so now I'm going to work on the cork. So this palette has the colors I need. I'm going to mix raw sienna and some warm sepia. This warm sepia is just a little bit too light for me. But you do you, okay? Whatever cork color you want, go ahead. In this case, I wanted a little bit deeper than the raw sienna, but not too dark. Or you can also mix your own browns. If you have a limited palette and you don't have brown, you can just mix it. Sometimes that even looks better. So just take your two complementary colors, and when you mix them together, you'll get a brown. So your red or green, or orange and blue, or purple and yellow. If you mix those complementary colors, you'll get brown. But again, it depends on the warmth or coolness of your color, what kind of brown you're going to get. So again, it's really important to get to know your colors. So I suggest you do a color swatch, color mixing. And we have that. We have an article, we have a guide for that. So I'm going to share it later in the comments. Okay, so here I did the cork. So I'm going to leave it like this now, and I'm going to add another layer later. So sometimes it's nice to work wet and wet, but it's also for even more accurate depiction, wet and dry is usually what I do. So here I just did the first layer, and then I'm going to wait for it to dry, and then later I'm going to add the shadowing and such. Okay, so I'm going to work inside now. There's some cork there, but since this is behind glass, this will be just a suggestion. The color won't be as dark, especially since it's behind blue glass, and as you can see, the glass is quite thick, so that's also gonna affect how clear you will see what's inside. Okay, so if you can see, darker, lighter, and not too clear. Okay, so while this part is still wet, I'm now going to add just some details on the glass, just using Prussian blue. So again, I'm going to test out if it's too dark. Okay, so I like it. This is just the perfect saturation to create those suggestive lines. So I'm just going to add some lines here and there. For the bottle. So it's like you're kind of outlining the bottle, but not really lining it. You're using more of your suggestive lines. So this is one way to do it, so that you don't overwork your line, so it doesn't look too heavy, and you can still lighten the edges. Okay, so that's what I do. I apply it. If I feel like it's too stark, I just go over it with a clean wet brush and just soften the edges. And so now, instead of the bottle like not being too visible, now you can see where the shape of the bottle. So you're just adding suggestive lines. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the top part. I'm adding shadow. Here at the neck or the mouth of the bottle. And also around the cork. So it's just to show that this is it's not flat. There's actually, the cork here, and there will be some shadowing around the cork. Okay, so I'll bring it closer so you can see. Okay, so far this is our potion bottle. Okay, and it's starting to dry, so now I can just get paint directly from here. Let me get some ultramarine and some phthalo green mix and just line just to suggest the line that disappeared earlier. So I'm putting it back using watercolor. Also going to add some texture. Okay, so now it doesn't look flat anymore. All right. Okay, so now, since this is kind of dry and this is my hat, okay, I like it. I like the texture. It's interesting. You can also, of course, use your own colors that you prefer to use for your hat. Now I'm going to add the part here, the band. Okay, so I'll use yellow ochre, because I'm going to add some metallic later on. But first, for the first layer, I'm just going to use yellow ochre. So it's a nice warm yellow that's not too bright. So I'm just painting this directly, wet and dry, on dry paper. Okay. So later on, I'm going to add some sparkle to this. I'm going to use our metallic palette once it's dry. So I'm going to wait for it to dry so that I can layer the metallics on top. Okay, so next, we have our hat, we have our potion bottle. With the templates I shared, I have another bottle mottled shapes, so you can totally have fun with that, and you can also create your own shapes. Okay, so now let's go to the broom. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my sketch now. For the brooms, I also shared two different brooms. You can do a more clean looking one or a more scraggly one. It's up to you. Okay, so I'll go for the cleaner one, so it's less detailed now. Okay, one moment. I'm just moving stuff around. Make sure it all fits in the screen. Okay, so here again, I'm just gonna trace. I did this earlier. I'm just gonna trace the broom. Okay, so let's see, where do I put it? Okay, let's put it here near the hat. I'm gonna make sure to leave space for the two other drawings that I need to do. Okay, so again, I'm gonna just trace, quickly trace. So if you have your light box, or if you have your bright window during the daytime, you can use that to trace. You can print the templates I shared to you. You can sketch them, of course, but if you don't want to sketch, if you want to focus on painting, then you can totally print this out and then use your window as your light box. Okay, so feel free to make it chunkier or rounder. Okay, so here, okay, here's a quick sketch, as you can see, just really quick and rough, because you're going to cover it anyway. So it's just your guide. All right, so now let's work on the broom. Okay, let's go back to our reference. Okay, so you can see just one layer of a lighter brown, and then we'll add the texture of the broom itself. Okay, so let's do that. I'm still gonna use the Sereno, I think. Let's see. And then, oh no, I think I'm gonna use the Allegro because I want the different colored browns. Okay, so here's the Allegro. So I'm gonna be using some raw sienna. Let's see, some raw sienna for this first layer here. As you can see, looks great. And then I'm going to use burnt sienna to create the texture. And then for the top, I'm going to use a mix of raw sienna and burnt umber. And then I'm going to use brown ochre to create the lines. Okay, so let's start. I'm just going to go and paint directly from the pan. Okay, so get from the pan and paint directly. Okay, so let's start with the raw sienna for the bottom part. Okay, so you don't have to make it too dark, just medium coverage, I think. And anyway, once it dries, we will add the lines, and if you feel like it's too light, you can still add another layer before you add the lines. So no worries about the depth of the color. You can still add another layer later on. Okay, so that's for the first part. Next, I'm going to use some raw sienna and then mix in a little bit of the burnt umber right here. Just for this is for the stick, the upper part. So I want it to be a darker color, but not too dark, because we want the lines that we will add later to show through. So the first layer is just a mid color, and then a darker one for the texture later on. Oops, see that? I touched it. Okay, so things like this happen, so don't stress. Just go over it again. So who else has these just wonderful accidents? Like dipping your brush in the wrong cup, like your coffee mug. Painting accidents. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the stick now and just cover it whole. Okay, so I switched to a rigger because it's a thinner part, so I can have more control over my lines. So if you want even more a darker witchy feel, just use darker colors and even more contrast, then that will give you a more dark feel. But this is more of a light, more of a fun witchy take on Halloween. Okay, so I will wait for these to dry before I add the lines, so that the lines don't get diffused, so that they're crisp and straight and really nice. So this is probably the easiest. It's just, more texture and addition later on. Okay, so let's go to, I left the last two, the cobweb and then the spider web and then the cat. So I also have templates for those two, so you can just totally trace. Okay, so let's go with the, let's go with the spider web first. Okay, so you can create your own spider web. You can get from actual spider webs. There are so many different kinds. When I was looking, so beautiful. There are really complicated ones that are just amazing. Art spiders just amazingly creating works of art every day. Okay, so I'm just again gonna quickly trace over this. So this is what I do when I want to create multiple copies of one, drawing. I just sketch them out and then repeatedly trace over it. So that way you have like your main drawing where everything came from. Especially if you're gonna recreate it several times, it's gonna make sure that everything is just looking as close to each other as possible. So just connect them. This is actually very soothing to do, the spider web. It's like Zen tangling. Okay, so just make sure that each part connects to the next, because that's how spiders do it. So just work your way around and connect. And they don't have to, okay, I think I spaced this too far apart. So they don't even have to be perfectly even, because if you look at the webs, they're not. Okay, so just a quick sketch. I'll bring it up close so you can see. You can actually fill up a whole paper of this, different kinds, different shapes of spider webs, and it's going to be beautiful. Okay, so let me continue. All right, I'm just going to use Paints Gray for this. Just one color. That's it. If you have dark paper, you can do the opposite. You can use white paint on the black paper. That's also a nice look. All right, so let's see. Here's the paints gray right here. So it's a nice just warm gray, cool gray, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to get the mixture here, and I'm going to use my rigger brush so I can do long lines continuously. So it doesn't have to be too dark. Again, you can test out your color on your paper before you do it. Okay, so this is why I like the rigger brush, because you can just draw several lines without fearing of running out of water and pigment in your brush, because it can hold more water and pigment than a regular small brown brush. And don't worry about making your lines straight. This is one of those times where it's actually nice that if they aren't straight. Okay, so I'm now going to go around starting from the middle so that I don't smudge again my previously drawn lines. Okay, so just work your way around. Take your time. I'm just doing this quickly since I don't want to take too much of your time. And thanks for watching. Thanks for spending your time with me. I appreciate it. And which one so far is the one that you think is your favorite to paint? Personally, I think I like the potions. I'm actually gonna do more potions in different bottles in different colors. That will be fun. Okay, so and there you go. Spiderweb is done just like that, very quickly and beautiful. Just one color, just lining with my rigger brush. All right, so this part is dry, so let me just add some sparkle to this. Okay, with our Prezioso set. It's an all metallic set, so I'm gonna get some gold for sure. This gold, so it has antique gold, it has gold, so I'm going to use gold just to add some shimmer to this band on the hat. Okay, so I'm just going to use my flat brush and just get directly from the pan and just apply over it. Okay, so it gives it that nice magical feel. Okay, so if you can see it, you can see it's sparkling there. Okay, it looks better in person. It's so hard to show it on camera, but it has this nice fine shimmer that you can see. Okay, there you go. All right, so if this is dry, then we can go ahead and paint the details. Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's add the details of the broom. Okay, using our warm palette, colors from the Allegra. I'm gonna use burnt sienna, this one, to add the details on the broom. All right, so let's do this here. Okay, I'm just gonna get directly from the pan using the same rigger brush, and then add the texture of the broom. So you can vary the size of the lines. Here I'm adding some thicker lines here at the top just to show that those parts are more shadowed. And then just adding smaller lines, thinner lines all around. Okay, so detail brushes are perfect for this because you will have more control over the lines that you create. So Zen Art has this whole set of just detail brushes specifically for times like this where you want to create really fine details. And again, I'm adding deeper color, thicker lines here and there. So just varying your line sizes, your shapes, and how saturated the color is. With just one color, you can already create so much. Okay. And then I'm going to add here and there. Next, the upper part, not to forget. And then there's the rope around tying them together. So I'm just going to use burnt umber for that. And there you go. You have the rope. And now I can work on the handle. So using brown ochre, I'm going to add the grains of the wood. Okay. So again, just vary your line sizes, your texture. So some grain will be longer, some short, some light, some dark. So just play around with those to make it even more realistic and interesting. Okay, so you can always add later. So take time to stop and take stock. You know, usually we paint really close and sometimes it really doesn't show us the whole picture. So take breaks and, you know, look at your work from a distance, because viewing it up close and viewing it from a distance will give you different perspectives on your work. And that's really important so that you can see if you need to, you know, improve it somewhere, add whatever. And then I'm just gonna add some shadow on one side just to give it that extra feel that it's not the flat stick, you know, that it's 3D. Just minor. So things like that, minor additions really make a difference to your work. Okay, so now I'll go back to the cork and I'll add burnt umber, just to add an extra layer, also some sort of texture. So take your time, and you can remember that you can work on layers. Okay, so you don't have to finish everything in one go. Okay, so I just dabbed my brush on top just to add the texture. Just a little bit below. Again, remember this is inside the bottle, so this will be lighter and not as clear. Okay, so for this part, I want just to darken some parts. Okay, so going back to the other palette, using Faint's Gray and Indigo, I'm just gonna go over some parts and darken the edges, like here around the band. Okay. Just like this. Okay, so that's the nice thing about layering. So if you feel like you don't like it now, just wait, you can still layer on later on. Okay, so I love using colors with granulation, but again, of course, this is a preference. So if you don't, best to check how your colors behave, so you know you can label which colors are, more granulating than the others. Okay, and for our final one, we have the cat. Okay, so we have the hat, we have the potion, we have the broom, spiderweb, and for our final one, we have the cat. Okay, so again, I sketched this so we can just trace it out. Okay, so here's my cat. Let's see if it fits down here. I also like to have it saved digitally because I can easily adjust the size. So like this, for example, if it's too big, I just squeeze it out and it becomes smaller. And so I can fit it down here. Okay, so I gave the cat like a swirl at the end of its tail, just to add a little bit of extra drama. So you can do a normal tail if you want. That's just me. So feel free to tweak the sketch around. Or of course, you can totally sketch it out yourself if you don't like tracing. Okay, so here I'm just quickly tracing around. And this is easy because just like the spider web, you can just use one color. You can just use black, or you can choose whichever color you like. Okay, you can use another color if you want. You can use purple. You can mix black and purple, up to you. Okay, so there's my cat, if you can see it. Okay, and then feel free to add the eyes or not. In my case, I don't think I'm gonna add the eyes. Okay, but it's just gonna be all black. Okay, but you can totally add the eyes. Okay, so I'm gonna go and paint my cat. I'm going to mix some indigo with black. Okay, so I'm going to use black. My palette, the Allegra palette has black, so it has that, but I don't want it to be a flat black, so I'm going to use some indigo and mix it with the black just to give it that extra something. Okay, so let's see. Get some black. You can just paint it directly and then just add your indigo. This is one of my favorite colors to mix with the black because it's a really dark gray, grayish blue, and it's perfect. It's just the right extra color to add to black. Okay, so I'm going to switch to a smaller brush just so I can control the details. So I do this in layers. So I first work on this, and if I feel like it's too light, then I can just add another layer on top later on. Okay, so remember, what you see when it's wet in watercolor won't be the same once it has dried. So just remember that you can work on layers and just add another one later to make it darker. Okay, so don't despair. Sometimes, you know, when you're working on it and it's really looking nice, and then later on when you come back to it, it's lightened a lot. So that's really part and parcel of, you know, working on watercolor. Colors will dry lighter. Okay, so I'm doing my cat. So I used black and then I added some indigo in just to create this like blue black cat. Because sometimes just doing it in black, you know, sometimes it can be too flat. So that's why I like to mix my own version of black. And again, I made the tail into this tail that's curled at the end, just, you know, so it's so cute. Okay, and there we have our black cat. So again, you can always add another layer later on if you want it to be more opaque. But for me, for example, I like this look. It's like a cat of the night effect. Okay, so here's our watercolor of Witchy Things. I'm gonna zoom out. Okay, so I hope you like this, and I hope you learned some things from me. Just simple, just easy, just some ideas that you can totally use and tweak and make it your own. Because, you know, we all paint things in different ways, no matter if it's just the same reference. And then again, you can always use a pen, for example, if you feel like you want to add details to other parts. Like, for example, I want to just add this hat just to separate the band. So you can totally mix it up. You can use colored pencils, you can add extra detail later on. Okay, so I like to do that sometimes. I like to add colored pencil texture on top of watercolor. So you can do that. You can, for example, for this, I'm just going to use some blue Okay, so this is Helio Blue. Okay, so you can just layer it on top. Just to add extra texture. So feel free to, you know, do mixed media, to mix your colors, mix your materials. It's also a fun way to add texture and extra detail. Or you can use watercolor pencil. It's up to you. I like to see the texture of the pencil. So I'm just adding it here and there. All right, so here is our Witchy Things watercolor. So I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. You can paint each one separately on a separate paper. You can take your time with each one. So this is just a really quick run through all the different Witchy Things. But there are more, of course. You can draw a cauldron and other things. So I shared the templates, but I'm gonna share them again in the comments later on. Plus our watercolor guide, our watercolor mixing guide. So it has all the graphs that I did that you can print out and to make your own. Okay, so I'm gonna flip back to my face now so I can say goodbye to you properly. Okay, so let me just adjust this. Okay, so here are our watercolor Witchy Things. So we have the hat, the broom, the cat, the potion, and the spiderweb. Okay, so thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye!